In this episode of the Bringing Business to Retail podcast, I want to talk to you about the 2 words that can cripple your entire business. Welcome to the Bringing Business to Retail podcast, where I, Selena Knight, share strategies, interview retail revolutionaries, and delve into the minds of e-commerce experts to help you grow a profitable, independent retail or e-commerce business. If you're stuck in a rut, or if you feel like business is way harder than it should be, or you've overachieved all of the things that you've set out to and are wondering what to do next, or how do I even make this better? I know that you're going to love today's episode. If you're stuck in a rut, feel like business is way harder than it should be, or you've achieved all of the things that you set out to and are wondering what next, or how do I even make this better? Then I know that you're going to love today's episode. Hey there, and thanks so much for joining me on the Bringing Business to Retail podcast. If this is your first time here, thank you for choosing to spend it with me, Selena Knight, the retail strategist. And if you are a long-time listener, again, thank you so much. I know that you have a huge choice when it comes to who you're going to pop into those earbuds and listen to. So I am super grateful that today you've chosen to spend your time with me. Now, when I first started this business, the business I'm in right now, a lot of my time was spent coaching retail and e-commerce store owners. Now, if you've been around for a while, you know that I had a chain of multi-award-winning stores, which I sold back in 2015, and then I moved into this consulting business. So nowadays, my time is mostly spent speaking, consulting on a one-to-one basis, working with retailers inside of my programs. But in those early days, I used to spend hours every single day coaching retail and e-commerce store owners. And at the end of the day, I would flop into the sofa with a glass of wine and I would whinge to my gorgeous husband Ed about how all these smart retailers, they knew what they had to do. But week after week, they would show up with a dozen different excuses as to why they hadn't done the action tasks that we'd set out. We'd finish up our calls and we would map out what they would do over the next week. And the next week they'd show up. And if I was lucky, maybe they'd done one. Maybe if I was super lucky, they've done 2 of the things on that list. And I took this to heart. I honestly thought that maybe I wasn't giving them the right advice. Maybe I was just too hard on them. I mean, it wasn't uncommon. I was going to say not uncommon, but there were a few occasions where the people I was coaching would burst into tears. I like to think that I'm pretty no fluff, no nonsense, but I also know that somebody needs to hold you accountable. So I thought maybe I was too tough on them, or maybe I was just expecting too much of them. Even though they'd hired me to help them grow their business and give them the right advice, they weren't getting there as quick as I would have expected. And for months, it felt like this huge weight on my shoulders. And I'll be honest, I was really struggling with this concept. Maybe I just wasn't a good coach. But I was pretty sure that I had a decade of experience. I'd won loads of awards. I'd built several stores from the ground up. I had a manufacturing business. I'd kind of been there, done it, and sold my business. So I was pretty sure that the information I was giving them was right. I mean, it was working for some people. It just wasn't working for everybody. So with my problem-solving brain, I'm a bit of a fixer. If you have listened to the podcast before, you know that I've mentioned this, but when there's a problem, I like to solve it. It's just in my DNA. It's probably why I'm so good at consulting in people's businesses, because I find the problems and then I work out how to fix them. So I decided that this was a problem that I needed to fix, and got out my best analytical brain and decided to start taking notes of what was happening on these calls. Why did all these little fires, that's what I was calling them at the time, what did all these little fires, these seemingly small decisions and tasks constantly take precedent over business growth actions or business growth decisions. And I knew from experience that there was a time in my retail businesses where I felt like I was drowning, running multiple stores, dealing with a team of people, manufacturing our own products, sourcing products from overseas, testing, all that kind of stuff, working long hours because I had this dream of a retail empire. And as a business owner, you know that you're faced with making decisions every single day. Big decisions, small decisions. Some days it feels like everybody wants a piece of you. Am I right? And this year, I don't know about you, but it kind of feels like all those decisions that we've had to make have been multiplied to the nth degree. And the problem with that is when you are constantly fighting these fires, when you are sweating over these micro decisions, which, let's be honest, when you're in the heat of the moment, they feel like they're big decisions at the time. But when you are constantly dealing with the little things, you can't deal with the big things. Now, can I just jump in and tell you a really quick story? And I promise it is relative. When I first met Ed, my husband, we went to a financial planner. It was obviously a very sound decision, but also if you haven't been listening for a while, you won't know that I actually met my husband on the 18th of December and we were married on the 18th of April. So 4 months to the day after we met, we were married. So, we decided to do the right thing. We went to a financial planner, and at the time I was still working for the local council. And one of the things that the financial planner asked us to do, and we were in our late 20s, and we're sitting on this very fancy sofa with our glass of sparkling water, and he's got this big whiteboard out, and he says, I want you to map out what your ultimate life looks like. And of course, when you're in your 20s, you want everything. So we're like, yeah, we would like a boat, and we both like nice cars, and we want multiple properties, and we just listed out. He made us go through every little thing, even down to the point where, were you going to have kids? Were they going to go to private school or public school? And I specifically remember saying, I was in my late 20s, saying at the time, I can't remember anything else that went onto that board, like specifically, but I do remember turning to Ed and looking at him and turning back to the financial planner and saying to him, by the time I'm 40, I want to be able to choose how much I work and how much I earn. And I remember looking back over at Ed, and he looked at me and he said, but you work for the local council. You're on a fixed wage and fixed hours. Like, how are you going to do that? And I remember just saying, look, he just asked us to tell us what the ultimate life looks like. Just write it down. And I remember him the financial planner writing it on the board. And it seemed so silly and frivolous at the time. But deep down inside, I knew that I wasn't going to work for the council forever. I didn't know what I would be doing or how my horticultural or arboricultural skills would fit into the whole plan. But I just knew that I was destined for big things. And it was a little bit scary saying it out loud. I can say it now, but at the time, I felt like I was like living beyond my means, I guess, or dreaming beyond my means. And when you feel like you are constantly tired, when you're snapping at everybody, and when you feel like a limb has been chopped off if your laptop is not on your lap, and when every day is filled with this mental strain of decision making, it's easy to fall into the trap of forgetting what the freaking hell you went into this business for. Now, back to those retailers. So I've told you my little story. I promise it will all wrap up in a moment. But back to those retailers that I was coaching in the early days. So I started recording those conversations and dissecting them. And as we were having the conversations, I would write specific quotes down of what they would say. And I took my analytical problem-solving brain because I knew if I could crack this, that these clients would see exponential growth in record time. I just had to find out why they weren't doing the things. And for months, I would go back over each call. I'd go back over my notes. What had I said? What had they said? How did they start the conversation? And how did they finish the calls? So going through this A4 binder notebook, I started highlighting bits and pieces. So I was going through, and then it hit me. There were 2 words that came up sometimes 10, 20, sometimes even 30 times in a 1-hour call. That's a lot, right? In 1-hour call, what does that work out to be? One every 2 minutes? These 2 words were so powerful, they were literally crippling these smart, savvy retail and e-commerce store owners. Now, these words are so powerful that I've actually banned the use of these words in our business because words do have power. And whilst I'll welcome any words of empowerment into our business, those that disempower have no place in my life. And they have no place in the lives of the people that I work with. So can you guess what they are? Are you ready? Those 2 words that can cripple your business were the words small business. But what was most important was the 2 words that were always before the word small business. And those were just a. So over and over again, there were these words, I am just a small business. But I'm just a small business. I can't because I'm just a small business. And when you use this phrase, I call it a get out of jail free card. You use this to justify not taking action. Calling yourself small rather than independent or boutique or bespoke. Calling yourself small keeps you playing small. Dreaming big doesn't have to mean having a dozen stores, but it does mean having to think bigger than will I make enough to pay the bills this month. That is thinking small. And inside of my signature program, Scale Your Store, one of the first things that we get into is this setting yourself up for success, getting clear on what you want from your business, just like that financial planner made me do. Now, I didn't know it was going to come from a business at the time, but getting clear on what you want is so important, and that includes how much you earn. And normalizing money, understanding what you're worth, because you are valuable. Those hours I spent all those years ago with that financial planner taught me about how valuable it was to map out what you want, even if you have no idea how the heck you are going to get there. Because looking back now, we've managed to tick off everything that we listed out. And in fact, I'm pretty sure when we went back, it was only about 6 or 7 years later, we'd achieved everything on that list. I didn't work for the council anymore. I had my own business. We had a boat. We've gone on to sell the boat, but we had a boat. We both had nice cars. And I had a business that allowed me to choose when I worked and how much I earned. And there were a lot of other things on there as well. But I remember saying to Ed, heck, we've actually done all of those things. And at the time, we had no idea how we were going to do it. Because if you would have told me back then that the way to fulfill those dreams was opening a store that sold baby goods, I probably would have laughed in your face because I didn't like kids and I didn't even really like shopping. I mean, I was a tradesperson. I had built my whole career on being a horticulturist and then an arborist, and then I moved into contract management of that same field. So the concept of being a retail business owner was so far beyond the realms of possibility to me back then. But if I hadn't have done that exercise, then how would I have known that I'd achieved success? As business owners, heck, as humans, we have to feel like we've achieved. Being caught up in the day-to-day, making decisions, running a business, it creates this perfect storm situation where you feel like you can't come up for air. And those things that were important to you, those milestones that you strive towards, they become another thing for you to tick off your to-do list. I remember when I first opened my store, the biggest milestone I had wasn't even a monetary thing. It was I didn't want to have to work Saturdays. I mean, I don't think I've ever said this on the podcast before, but one of my side hustles when I worked for the council was as a real estate buyer's agent. I loved property. I still do love property. But the reason I never went into it full time was because I didn't want to give up my weekends. And then I ended up running a business where I was working on the weekends. And so that was my first milestone. I just didn't want to have to work Saturdays. And it took about 6 months before that happened. But if I had not set that goal for myself, then that success feeling wouldn't have been there when I knew that I didn't have to work Saturdays anymore. So maybe you have some big dreams as well. Maybe you have things that you want to do in this world, or places that you want to see, or people that you want to help. Maybe these big dreams sit in the back of your mind. Perhaps you haven't even ever spoken them out loud, because who are you to have these grandiose dreams? And whilst you might not know yet the exact steps to get there, I can tell you from experience that thinking small, playing small, being a small business probably isn't going to fulfill those dreams. But if you think that your store, your business, can help you build the life that you want, then I just wanted to give you a heads up that Scale Your Store Live has just opened for the last time this year. If you want to leverage the upcoming holiday season and put yourself firmly on the big dream path, then you've got just a couple of days to do so because enrollment closes on Monday, Australian time. During Scale Your Store Live, not only will you get bonus weekly coaching calls, but there'll also be one-on-one coaching opportunities with me and my team and additional live mentorship calls where I'm going to take you behind the scenes of what's working in our agency when it comes to marketing and growing your business. There's a whole bunch of bonuses when you do Scale Your Store Live. If you want to see all of the details, you can find them just for a few more days over at selinaknight.com/scale. But what I really want you to take away from this episode is that you have the capability of being anything that you want if you just stop thinking small. I would love you to share with me what your big dreams are, either over in our Facebook group, the Retail Academy, or hey, just send me an email or a DM. You guys have a fantastic week, and hopefully I will see you inside of Scale Your Store, but I'll be back again right here, same place, same time next week. Bye. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of the Bringing Business to Retail podcast. You can find all of the show notes over at selinaknight.com. If you found something that you heard today particularly useful, I'd love it if you could leave me a review on iTunes or Stitcher. And of course, feel free to share this episode with someone that you think could benefit by listening to it. Want more retail biz strategies? You can watch the Bringing Business to Retail TV show, where each week I'll answer a question or provide you with a simple, actionable retail biz strategy that you can implement in your business right away. If you have a question or a guest, I'd love to hear from you. Drop my team an email at podcast@selinaknight.com, and I'll see you on the next episode. Have a great week.